I'm reading from Rays of the One Light. These are weekly commentaries on the Bible and Bhagavad Gita, written by Swami Kriya-yoga, based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. Faith is a call to prayer. Prayer is a call to faith. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. In the Gospel of St. Matthew we read, "Ask and it shall be given you. Seek and ye shall find. Knock and it shall be opened unto you. Verily I say unto you, if you have faith and doubt not, if ye shall say unto this mountain, Be thou removed, and be thou cast into the sea, it shall be done. And all things whatsoever ye shall ask in prayer believing, ye shall receive." Paramahansa Yogananda showed by his own example that prayer is a power, provided we believe deeply in that power. When our thoughts and feelings are strongly focused and then united in growing awareness to the divine presence within, they can bring even seemingly unrealistic wishes to fulfillment. When Paramahansa Yogananda was in charge of his school in Ranchi, India, he took the boys on occasional outings to the surrounding countryside. There was a waterfall not far away, he told Swami Kriya-yoga, where I took them sometimes. It was dangerous to cross there, but I would cry out to the boys, "Do you believe in God?" "Yes," they would shout back enthusiastically, and so we always crossed in safety. Years later, after I'd gone to America, one of the teachers tried to do the same thing, but he lacked spiritual power. One of the boys slipped on a rock and was drowned. Thus the master explained, belief alone is not enough. It must be united to one pointed awareness, which leads to self-realization. The Bhagavad Gita, in the 6th chapter, underscores the necessity for such one-pointed concentration. Whenever the mind, fickle and restless, wanders off from its concentration, let the meditating yogi withdraw it resolutely, spurning every distraction, no matter how alluring, and bring it back again and again under the control of the self. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
So we have in this reading the statement that prayer is a power. So we have to develop that power of prayer. And as the reading says, the first and most important part of developing the power of prayer is one-pointed concentration. In other writings, Swami says that one-pointed concentration is the essence of effective prayer. So it's really important that we develop it. And how do we develop that? It's so easy in this world to be distracted, isn't it? So, Master has given us the Hong Saw meditation technique, following the breath, the inhalation Hong, the exhalation Saw. No other thoughts, no other distractions. And if the mind wanders off, keep pulling it back, keep pulling it back. Little by little, that Hong Saw meditation, which the syllables are bij mantras, that's like seed mantras that have innate power. They're ancient. And if we focus on just Hong on the inhalation, Saw on the exhalation, we are affirming the meaning of those seed mantras, which is, I am He. I am Spirit. Don't say them out loud. Don't move your tongue. Just focus at the spiritual eye and repeat. Inhalation, Hong. Exhalation, Sa. Very, very simple. But is it easy? No, it's not easy. But it's worth the trouble. It's worth going into it. I remember Swami once, the early days of Ananda, but I had had kriya by that time. Hong Sa is the first technique that we're given on this path. And I was working for Swami at the time, and he called me after having a seclusion, telling me it was time to get back to work now. And I picked up the phone and he said, Nirmala, you can find God just through Hong Sa. And on this path, we think, as we're preparing for kriya, we think of Hong Sa as baby kriya. And so I had thought of kriya as baby kriya, so now I had kriya. I didn't need to do Hong Sa anymore. But when he said that, I went, okay, I'm going to start doing that again. We need to energize all of the techniques, and that one is a fabulous one for concentration. Another thing that we need to work on when we're working on developing the power of prayer is attunement. Attunement with God. Imagine Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. We've all seen the paintings. Even the tradition is that he's sweating blood. All of his disciples are asleep. He's alone, praying so fervently. Lord, let this cup pass from me. He can see what's happening. He's going to get arrested. He's going to get tortured. He's going to get crucified. If you've ever read about crucifixion, it's like one of the most horrible ways to die ever devised. It's just cruel and horrible. He saw that coming. He saw his death. Lord, let this cup pass from me. But nevertheless, thy will be done. He saw it. If it's what you want, Lord, thy will be done. That's what we need to do. When we see something that's so calamitous, that the worst possible thing has happened in our lives, we just don't know how we can even withstand it. That's the moment to say, thy will be done. So what happened to Jesus? Can't see past that crucifixion. That's the worst possible thing that could happen. But lo and behold, he conquered death. He rose from the dead. And in that way, inspired billions of people for all futurity to trust in God. Swami used to tell a story of a young woman in India at a very young age, like still a child. She was so spiritually minded that she just did not want the world. And being in India and being open to sainthood, her parents allowed her to stay in her room. They even walled up her room, just passed food into her occasionally, and she grew into this very powerful saint. And people from all around the countryside would come and receive miraculous healings from this girl. Well, meanwhile, her father was very ill, had been very ill for decades, and her mother kept pleading with her, please, you're healing all these strangers. Heal your own father. And she said, no, I can't do it. It's not the right thing. Year after year, mother was after her, please heal your father. Finally, she said, all right, but you will see. And so she healed the father. He became perfectly healthy, and he went right into gambling and drinking and carousing and just lived a horrible, horrible life and died. We don't know. We don't have the bigger picture. I love this story. I may have told you this before, but it's worth repeating. That there was a man in ancient China who lived out in the countryside with his son, who was a young man, and their prized possession, what gave them wealth and standing in their community, was that they had this beautiful horse, one horse. And the neighbors were a little jealous of this horse, but they, knew that it was the source of this man's status. Well, one day the horse got loose and ran away. And the neighbors came and said, oh, what a calamity. Oh my God, this is just so terrible. We're so sorry that this happened. And they were sincere, just so sorry. And the old man said, we will see. And about a week went by, and the horse returned. And he brought 4 wild horses with him. And the old man was suddenly 4 times as rich. So he had all these beautiful horses. And the neighbors came, again, as they will do. And they said, that's incredible. What incredible luck you had. Now you're just fabulously wealthy. That's just amazing. And he said in response, we will see. Well, not long after that, this young man, who was the son, was trying to get the horses so he could ride them, and one of them bucked him off. He fell to the ground and broke his leg. And the people said, oh, that's terrible. Your poor son. Now he can't help you in the fields, and he's just all laid up, and this is going to take weeks to heal. And the old man said, we will see. We will see if it's good fortune or bad fortune. We never really know the full picture. We have to trust in God. He sees the whole thing. We just see a little tiny piece of the tapestry, and we don't know what the picture is. So the young man is out in the garden with his leg up, trying to recuperate. And what happens? But the king's men come through the countryside, and they are recruiting all the able-bodied young men to go and fight for the king to certain death. And this man's son is in the garden healing his leg. And again, people say, oh, what horrible fortune. Well, we will see. No matter what it is, we will see. I remember reading, I don't remember all the details, I just remember the salient point, but there was a group of monks, and I'll have to look this up again, but there was a group of monks living in Hiroshima when the bombs were dropped, when all that devastation happened. And these monks were just fine. You never know what is going to happen. All we can ever do is trust. So we have to have concentration, we have to attune ourselves to God's will. We have to move from believing to faith. So belief is like when I have precious jewels and I give them to entrust them to someone because I have belief in them that they will be honest. I believe in them, so I give them this. After they prove their honesty, then I can have faith in them. So we have to move from just believing that this is sort of a good idea to attune ourselves to the master of the universe who knows everything when we know hardly anything in comparison. We start to lean on God, that beautiful saying from the Bible, trust in the Lord with all thy heart and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your path. So we have to start by believing, and then the way to get to faith is by continually surrendering and trusting. I have had many strange experiences in my life, and when I look back on them now, I can see the hand of God. This was a funny one. I think I should tell this. I'm asking if I should tell this. Okay, this is a strange story, but I was a freshman in college, so I was 18 years old. And a group of us decided at Ohio State University, we decided that we would go to Jamaica on break. So we visited Jamaica, and it was so incredibly beautiful. White sandy beaches, emerald ocean, just so warm and beautiful. Well, we had heard, once we got there, that there were young foreign girls being abducted. And so to be careful, never go out at night and all this sort of thing. Well, we spent the day, one friend and I spent the day at the beach, and we were just walking home. It was still light, and we heard this car come screaming fast down the hillside, and it screeched right in front of us and stopped. And 3 guys got out, guns, knives, the whole thing. And so we're standing there. I think, there's a lot to be said for the innocence, the stupidity of innocence, It just really doesn't get that anything bad could ever happen. And I was all relaxed from the beach, and, it was like, whatever. And so I was standing there, and this guy on my side of where he jumped out of the car, he was in front of me, he grabbed my arm and tried to push me in the car. And I, in the stupidity of innocence, just said, "Oh, come on, I'm not getting in the car with you." I just laughed it off. And it sort of took him aback, and he grabbed me again, and I really did not move. I was rooted to the spot. He kept pulling on my arm, and I just didn't move. And finally, he got kind of spooked, and he said, okay, give me your money. So I had this really nice red leather wallet that was hand-tooled, really beautiful. So he grabbed it, and I had $50 in there, which was a lot of money in those days. And he took the money, and I had the chutzpah to say, can you give me my wallet back? I really like that wallet. And then they just got in the car and went screaming off again. So, that's a funny story, but my God, what could have happened? That might have been the end. And I would have had to go through babyhood and high school. Oh my God. Phew. High school is a great incentive to never be reborn. So, when I think back on that, yeah, it's a funny story, but you know what? My feet were rooted, and this grown man could not move me off of my space. I don't think that was my strength. I think that was God's strength, protecting the stupid and the innocent. So I suggest that you look back through your life with fresh eyes. And when has God protected you? When has He ever abandoned you? He's with you. Every minute, every breath. If He forgot about us for a minute, we would not exist. We exist through His grace. And let's lean on that grace, never with presumption, never with God is with me, but humbly saying, please be with me, help me. And I'll just leave you with this last thought, which is from St. Paul in a letter to the Philippians. He said, worry about nothing. Pray about everything.
This concept that prayer is a power, as Nirmala was saying, led me to a little bit of research, a little bit of digging, because I remembered from an earlier reading of the comparison of Bible and Gita that we did earlier in the year. Swami gives an amazing, very simple but very profound definition of faith. He said, and I had to hunt for it, it's back in number 16, so it's 30 weeks ago. He said, faith is the attractive power of your underlying state of consciousness. And I'll say it again, faith is the attractive power, which is another way of saying magnetism without using the word, the attractive power of your underlying state of consciousness. And what struck me about that is that we don't, so taking Nirmala's little story just as an example, we don't necessarily see the bigger picture, true. We don't necessarily have sort of regular access to our underlying state of consciousness, but it's there. And it's the power that allows one's feet to be rooted to the ground in a situation where one should not move forward at somebody else's will, because that's not moving us in the direction that we're trying to go. So sometimes you have to dig your heels in. Other times you have to move quickly when the situation demands it. And that power, as Nirmala was saying, is a power that grows with effort and with attunement. So I'll give you a little example of this that may be helpful. If we think of a marathon, for those who aren't attuned to these sorts of things, a marathon is, so every once in a while you'll see a bumper sticker on the back of a car that says 26.2. That's what that means, 26.2 miles. It's the traditional marathon from the runner in Greece in ancient times who ran that distance to deliver news and then promptly dropped dead. Anyway, well, I remember running my first marathon at the age of about 15 and a half. I was about to become a sophomore in high school, and we had plotted, my dad and an uncle of mine and I had plotted out this route around Otter Tail Lake in western Minnesota in the summer, and we were planning to do this. Our route, which we had carefully scouted out to be pretty darn close to 26.2 miles, ended up actually being 27 because we took a wrong turn at the end. We were so spaced out that we ended up going an extra 3/4 of a mile, which was pretty much of a death march by that point. We were really wiped out. Anyway, my point in saying this is that if you're going to run a marathon, you don't run 10 miles today, having sat on the couch for the last 25 years, and then plan to do the marathon tomorrow. It doesn't work that way. First of all, you're not going to have any fun with the 10 miles at all. You're going to have to start with a half a mile or a mile. Kathy Reese knows this because she worked on running a marathon some years ago, and it takes some months to get this together. And it took me some months, I mean, really, you could almost say years to get it together. And even still, they say that the marathon is half over when you reach 20 miles. The second 6.2 miles is the other half of the marathon. And I have to say from my own experience that that is true, because the first 20 miles kind of breezes by and then you hit the wall, and the last 6.2 is kind of tough. Well, that process is a little bit the process of what we have to do to grow the power of faith, the power of prayer. It's not, what's underlying gets built slowly, gets built gradually. And we kind of take it for granted. Another example that struck me. You know, if you were to say, okay, I need to pay this bill, and so I need, $17.96 to go from my account to this credit card, this whatever it may be. You would just, online, tell it to the bank, write a check, whatever. I mean, it's not a challenging thing. We don't go, I assume that this is so for you. We don't approach the teller at the bank on our hands and knees, begging, would you please release $27 of my money so I can pay my bill? We just walk up, say, give me my money. This is what I need. Show me your, put the driver's license on the counter, whatever it may be. We just do it. It's not a question. When we approach God, it should be the same way. We don't go on our hands and knees. We don't grovel. We don't beg. We just say, this is what needs to happen. And that awareness of what needs to happen is something that we get in tune with. Now, I don't know how many mountains have gotten tossed into the sea by somebody. I mean, in what situation do you need a mountain to be thrown into the sea? It's an interesting question, and there may be other implications. Somebody may have a house on that mountain and may have a different opinion about whether the mountain should get tossed into the sea with his house along with it. there are other ramifications, and we learn to see those in our lives, and it grows with time. Swami points out, and in the reading, Master pointed out that somebody else tried to do what he tried to do, and it didn't go so well, as you heard. And we can think, and I've watched in my own life, Swami Kriyananda told about how many years ago there was a fundraising event at Ananda Village in the Nevada City area, and lots and lots of little things, contribute $25 for the, fixing this, and put $50 for the flowers that we'll plant over here, and et cetera, et cetera. Well, at the very bottom of this list was a line item that was, fix the potholes in front of the road by Master's Market. And it was $3,000 for that particular one. And Swami looked at the list, he was happy with all the thing, and he thought, nobody's going to pick that bottom one. And it so happened that he had a particular passion for having roads that worked. Roads that were not alternately either dust thou art, or peanut butter in the wintertime, which would get you stuck in the mud spinning your tires. Something that was actually functional. So he signed his name to that. Now, interestingly, he did not have $3,000 at that moment in his life, but he signed it with the intention to draw that $3,000 because he knew that nobody else had the $3,000 either, and it needed doing. And sure enough, before the time was up, the $3,000 came to him and he was able to make that contribution. Now, other people have tried things like that and not necessarily had the same results as he did, because it is a power that grows with time, with attunement, with awareness, with, as just going back to Nirmala's little story, with the sense of God's power flowing through. Not begging, not cajoling, not whining and complaining, but just know this needs to happen. There's a beautiful story. We've traveled all over Italy. We both lived there at different times and have been back to visit and on pilgrimage, etc. And it seems like you can't really be a town in Italy, an official town that holds its head up proudly, unless you have a saint, preferably an incorrupt saint, preferably one who's about 4 feet tall, but no, actually not preferably, but I mean, just it helps to have that. And I remember learning the story, one of the many amazing stories of Saint Clare, who was a contemporary of Saint Francis. And she was in her little monastery, and invaders were coming to the area, and she was tiny. She was a tiny little person. There's a convent full of nuns, and she's the one protecting them at this moment. And she goes to the window or the door upstairs, looking out over this balcony, seeing this army coming towards her. What has she got? Is she going to pull out a sword? Is she going to pull out a gun? What is she going to do? She pulls out the host. She pulls out the wafer that's part of communion, and she holds it up. And essentially says, you're not coming in here. And whatever it was about her somehow freaked them out, and they turned around and they went the other way. They did not come. It's like, nope, we're not messing with this. Whatever this is, we're not going here. We're not dealing with this. That is God's power. That's not the power of a little person. A little person can be blown away by a strong gust of wind. I mean, it's just, hold up that host and say, no, you will not come. And they don't. That is power of God. We can be instruments of that power. It takes awareness, it takes attunement, and it takes not faking ourselves out into thinking that we are either more or less than we think. We have to be exactly where we are. We can't fake whatever that underlying state of consciousness is. I remember Haridas, one of the founders of Ananda Sacramento, not at this address, but incarnations ago over on Marconi. Back in the day, he said, there were times when we had a bill to pay and there wasn't necessarily enough money in the checking account to cover it. And he said, I remember going to the ATM machine and putting my card in the thing, asking for $20 so I could get the gas money to go to Ananda Village for the important whatever it was that was going on at Ananda Village. And the thing would spit the card out and say, you don't have enough money. And so, put it in again and try again and spit the thing out and put it in again, try it again. Meanwhile, there are people waiting now. And he finally just was like, Divine Mother, if you want me to go, I need $20 because I don't have enough gas to make it there and I don't want to run out partway. And sure enough, the $20 came out. Now, how? I don't know. And I don't know that I would recommend that method. But if your name is Haridas, sometimes you can pull off things like that. And I don't think the bank was out the $20. I think he filled it in later on when it came to him. But all of us have that ability to do what is needed in the moment and ask for that grace to come, and it will come, and it does come. But it comes when we actually know, and we actually just stand on that spot and say, this is what needs to happen. Do through me what needs to happen. Flow through me in the way that needs to happen for the benefit of whatever it is, the people, the situation. And God's blessing does come. And that power keeps on growing and growing until we know that we are one with the King of the universe. This song is called In the Spirit and written by Swami Kriya-yoga as part of his oratorio, Christ Lives. And I would like to suggest, he's describing the vision of St. John in Revelation. And I'd like to suggest that we feel these words. It begins with the words, I was caught up in ecstasy. Feel that that is your own reality, because time isn't real anyway. We are caught up in ecstasy. We don't necessarily know it yet. But try to feel that reality as part of your own being. Was caught up in ecstasy. 'Twas a day sanctified by God. There he showed me the truths of heaven, truths which all seeking him should know. How the soul made to live in freedom can reclaim its eternal right. How the night, born of our delusions, can be fired, blazing